Worked okay, that's.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Book for Lunch, our kickoff for the fall season. I just want to thank you for coming. I have a few extra slides and things and announcements to share with you. I think I'll start out with our first thing that's really important is the last time we left you in April, you knew that Klein Short was retiring, our children's librarian, children's youth librarian. And I want to introduce to you our new children's youth librarian, Chelsea Funk. And she comes to us. She actually lived with Colby. You know Sam Funk, that's her husband. And she's been teaching for what, 8 years in Oakland? 9 years in Oakland. She teaches Spanish. She also helps with volleyball. But now she's our child youth librarian. And she has 2 children, Seth and Shay, and their little ones. So she knows all ages. So that's really cool. And I'll show you what all the work she's been doing to get us up and running. She's just gone through things and figured out how she wants to change things up a little bit, a whole bunch, but some. And then I'm helping us move forward. And then our second one, so we have Alicia Unruh. She moved in end of June, not expected, but we knew that we was thinking about doing it. We just weren't expecting it that soon. And so we're like, oh, okay. So we get a shift, and Wynn is still our assistant director, but she's helping with cataloging and new books and things like that, adding new books in. And we backfill Wynn's bookkeeping position with Vi Cornett. And Vi has been with us for what, quite a few years. She teaches our ESL class in the evenings, and she's been a part-time circulation person. But she had worked for Nancy LaPelle for quite a few years in her bookkeeping office, part-time. So we just kind of stole her for that part of her giftings for the library. I kind of like to do that when I hire staff and find out what they really like to do and what their giftings are. I like to see if we can use those giftings to benefit the community. So that's really that. And you know Katie. Katie's doing ILL more so. She's also circulation supervisor and helps with the part-time staff, but she's now doing ILL. We kind of split that up because it's a big job to do ILL, cataloging, ordering new books and all that. And so we split that up because Wynn does more than just the cataloging and the new book. She does a lot of stuff with the assistant as assistant director. So we gave Katie that job. So those are our staff differences, and we get started on that. Oh, well, there we go. My battery went. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll do this. Oh, okay, yeah. All right, so October, we will have Book for Lunch October 2nd. I do have an author. I'm not going to tell you who it is yet because he's written 3 books and he has 2 Kansas notable books. I just haven't gotten all the details, and something where it kind of goes weird. Then I have to change it out, but I'm pretty sure he's coming. He'll be in Topeka on the 28th and somewhere else on the 4th, and so in between he's coming to us. If you like to read and you like to be part of a book discussion group, we're reading the book Bel Canto by Ann Patchett, and then we will have a Kansas Humanities speaker come October 9th. We have like 30 books. I mean, there are plenty of books for you to check out and read and then be part of the discussion. We really enjoyed our book discussion group. It starts at 7, and we usually go between 7 and 8 till 8:30 or so. Always have snacks, and we meet upstairs in the large room. And then November we have I don't know if you know Nancy Brendel. She's a retired teacher from Colby, and she's working part-time at the library now. She's gone back to school helping part-time in school. But she's been helping with, reading books before, doing the library, like, maybe once a month, once every couple months. And so I had read this book and said it was really good, and she read it. And so she said she loved it so much, she read some of the nonfiction books. And so she's going to be telling us about this book in November. She's very passionate about it. And it's in honor of veterans because the women, it's all about women who served in Vietnam. And it's a tremendous book. We want to be there. Yeah. And then, ESL, we have ESL classes. Remember I told you about Vi? She teaches these classes on Thursday nights. And then, let me tell you what's happening with the library coming out real soon. In the end of October, about the 21st of October. Oh, it's not exciting. Okay. Sorry, this one, I'm not gonna fix this one. This is on another screen that shows you the word of people. And, anyway. So remember we talked about how we can expand the library. It's gonna cost about $6 million. And the board just decided that since it's gonna cost so much money and take so long to get it fixed, one of our biggest problems was our ADA access to our building. So we have redesigned the east side of the library, and right now the handicap parking is here. You'll see in the next slide that we'll have handicap parking here, and you'll come up and you'll go in here. This will be a small ramp, and you'll go in to double doors. And where those two steps are that have been there forever, that say emergency exit on the southeast side of the library, we're using those doors to make the ADA entrance and make a ramp that goes up. That's the best way for us to make ADA accessible ramping and doors. We want to make it look beautiful. We designed an airlock and a place with lights and a place where you can come out of the rain and then go into the regular part of the library. And then this is the parking area. So we're just moving the handicap parking over here and here. So you'll park here, then you go here. But everybody all along here will come into this entrance here. This east entrance will be closed and the south entrance will be closed. So if you park here, you'll just come over here and come up. Okay. That's the best way to do it. We'll make it safer. And in the middle of that, we're going to add what we call hush offices. These offices are mobile. And this one fits 2 to 4 people. It'll have USB drives in it, it'll have lights, it'll have air, it'll have, we can put computers in there and all kinds of things. And you can have a private meeting there. You could have a business meeting, you could have a small little group meeting, you could have an interview, counseling, you can take tests, do anything. A lot of things that people would want to do. And we're going to add those. And the Friends of the Pioneer Memorial Library are helping us to raise funds for those. And so those are to get them shipped here, to get them installed, and to get them built and everything. This is about 30,000 by the time you do all of that. This one is a larger room. It's 4 to 6 people, and will be our handicap accessible office. We won't have as many tables and things. We'll be able to put different tables or configurations according to what the needs are for that bigger group. And so we have some of that money, or it's about 50,000. We don't have it completely, we have most of it. And then so we have a few things that are happening. When we put the new door in, we're going to move all the stacks around. So sometime we may have to have you guys come and use a door in the library that's, you won't be using the southeast door. You might be using the south door or the east door, and have it blocked off just to be able to let you check books out while we rearrange the library. So you guys, that'll be between October 21st and probably the end of February. So we'll keep you informed, let you know what's happening. But it's gonna be fun actually, and it's gonna be nice to be able to do some new things and bring a few different things at the library. I told you about Chelsea and her coming and doing things. Yep. One of the things she's doing is she's taking over, and she and Garrett are doing the Youth Activity Center. Chelsea is helping. She oversees it and looking at all the kids and learning all about what we do with the kids downstairs. We have anywhere between 15 and 25 children a day that come down here and use this space. So in case you hear that this space isn't being used, we just at 5:30 last night, we called our insurance companies out, table across that, just so we can have lunch here. Okay, so it gets used every day. And then we have our children's programming. Chelsea is doing story time now. And she's doing Baby and Me, which is kind of, we call it the Lapsive. We decided to change the name because people understand Baby and Me better than Lapsive. And so she's doing 4 sessions. And then toddler classes, which is Play with Purpose. She'll do those in October. So basically some of the same things she's taking with. And then our story time. And she's telling us that this year's themes, next couple of years' themes, she's going to do things, her favorite things. So the kids are going to learn about travel. They're going to learn about ice cream and magical creatures and all kinds of stuff. So they get to know her. And then, of course, you know about us asking books before kindergarten. If you have a kindergartner or a grandchild or a great niece or a great, nephew, and they're under the age of 5 and haven't started kindergarten, they can do 1,000 books for kindergarten, and you read it to them and then scan the book or put it in, and then you get prizes every 200 books. And so, and Chelsea, if they sign up, they get a packet of a bag full of things when they sign up to. So that's updated that a little bit. Now, the bad weather has not started yet, so I just want you guys to know if you need to know if we're open. Please remember to go to the website, Pioneer Memorial Library, Facebook, or our library catalog. It'll tell you, we'll put something there too. Okay, there's 3 places you can find out if we're open, just in case. And we can also put those announcements like, hey, don't park in this area today because we have construction, like October 21st. Sometime during that week, they're going to tear up part of the parking lot. But they have to put new handicap parking so that, and new ramping so that you can get to the east door while they make the southeast door. So we'll put those announcements up on Facebook, the website, and in the catalog. Okay. And then don't forget that we have Libby, and then we have Booklet for digital ebooks. Yeah, and I'm going to now going to invite our speaker. Okay. Amanda. I'm going to invite Amanda, and she's going to speak to us. She actually has 3, I'd say 3.5. One book she helped write with 2 other people, but she's going to talk to us on the rhythm of fractured grace, and then she has 2 other books she might want to tell us about. And if she would like to cover, she can tell us about herself and tell us about the books. And yeah, I just want to get into certain. Okay, I'm on now. Okay, yeah, that checks are part of my life. Okay, that's less intimidating. Is that okay for everybody? Okay, so I'm Amanda Wen. I'm really happy to be here. I am from Wichita. So I've never been to Colby before, but you guys, it sounds like you have a really wonderful library. I spent a lot of my childhood at our library and other libraries around, reading and checking out stacks of books taller than me. Libraries can be the heart of a community, and it sounds like you guys have that here. So consider yourselves blessed, because that's not the case everywhere. A little bit about me. I am a Wichita native. My parents are both from Ulysses, so I have been to the western part of Kansas many, many times. My mom actually became a nation
but, I am actually a professional musician, that's my day job. Writing is writing is my side gig. I am the choir accompanist at Haven High School, so I am familiar with the small town aspect a little bit. I went to school in Wichita, and then I was that kid that could not wait to get out of Kansas. I was like, all right, I'm going somewhere else, I'm gonna go. So I went super far away, and I went to the University of Oklahoma. I became a Sooner. They gave me nice scholarships, so they bought my faculty. And then I went to grad school at the University of Illinois, and I thought, okay, I'm settled up in Illinois, this is great. I met my husband, we had our first baby, and then we moved back to Wichita. So, and I would not want to live anywhere else. I love it back home. We have 3 kids now. They are 15, 14, and 11. They just started back to school. So I think what I will do is I'll start with, let's see, thinking how I want to do this. Let's see. I'll start with talking a little bit about the books, and then if we have some time, I'll talk about my writing journey. I wrote a lot of stories as a kid for fun, but then I decided, as much as I love writing, I also love music, so that's what I went to school for. I have 2 degrees in cello performance. And I play piano also, but as soon as I got done with school, I found myself very not sure what I wanted to do, and I had a dream one night, and it was a story. It was a really interesting story, and I'm going, I wonder how that turns out, and the only thing I could think to do was sit down at the computer and write. And I think my husband came home from work about 6 o'clock that night. I was still in my pajamas at the computer. And he's like, what have you been doing all day? And I said, I think I'm a writer. And he goes, okay. He is the most chill and laid back person on the planet. So I wrote for fun a little bit. And then when we moved back to Wichita, I got reconnected with my middle school best friend, who is herself a multi-published author. And after we had coffee a few times, I got up the guts to tell her, hey, I've been writing too, because I figured she knew me in my 11-year-old brick wall bangs phase back in the early 90s. So like, she can handle this. And she told me all the things I was doing wrong. But one of the things she said was, you're doing a lot of things right, so keep going. And her encouragement led to me getting published. This book, Roots of Wood and Stone, this is my debut. This is based on some family history of mine. My mom is a genealogist. She has been tracing our family history all over the United States and some of the world. She thought, you know, I want to know where all the immigrants came from. The first immigrant she traced came to the US from Ireland in 1861, and she's like, oh, this is going to be easy. Turns out 1861, that's the most recent immigrant to this country in our family. All of the rest of them came over basically on the second boat after the Mayflower and stayed. Like all the small New England towns and upper Midwest towns, we had ancestors. We spent a lot of family vacations tracing them, and a lot of them stopped in Sedgwick County, Kansas. Some of them stopped in Western Kansas. Like I said, my parents knew us as, we have a lot of people in Grant County that we're related to, but the Sedgwick County people, they had a farmhouse that is actually now about 3 miles from where I live. It is still standing, which I think is amazing. It's been abandoned for probably 10 years now, but it belonged to some of my ancestors, and I grew up knowing that's Grandpa Little's house. You know, I just knew that I had family that lived there. I am not a DIY, buy an old house and fix it up person, but I always wished I was. So I thought, now I could write a book about that. So this one, my books are all split, which is you have a story in the contemporary timeline, and then there's a story in the historical timeline, and they intersect. And the setup for this one is we have Sloan is the heroine. She works at the historical museum in Wichita, and a guy comes in with a beat up old satchel from his grandma's basement, and he's helping clean out her old farmhouse, trying to get her to move. And he says, hey, look, this is old. And the museum curator is saying, yeah, okay, but we already have 6 of these. This is nothing special. And he goes, I want you to keep it anyway. And she does. And then she looks inside and she finds a diary from a 9-year-old girl who lived in Kansas. And so the past timeline deals with Sedgwick County pioneers, in the 1870s, and I'll read a little bit of that one. This is when she has figured out that there is a diary, and she has, she's decided to come out to the house to see this house that's been mentioned, and it says Friday's deluge had given way to a Saturday of brilliant sunshine and a sky of liquid blue. A beautiful day for a drive to Janesville, a small town on Wichita's western outskirts. To Garrett's grandparents' house and possible answers. But as she rolled along the highway, Sloan stared goggle-eyed at the proliferation of new big box stores and cookie-cutter McMansions, a far cry from the gently rolling farmland not even 5 years ago. Subdivisions whizzed past, all with brick walls, lit signs, and names that sounded pretty but were utterly devoid of meaning. Harbor Point, Meadowlark Mountain, Pine Ridge. Suburbia had spilled across the countryside like red wine on a white tablecloth. Just past the last cathedrals of conformity, the GPS turned instructions to turn right. When she did, onto a mud and gravel road marked by shrubbery obscured mailbox, Sloan's irritation with suburbia faded to nothingness. Stately, thick-trunked trees stood at attention on both sides of the long driveway, kissed with the pale pinks, creamy whites, and tender greens of spring. Branches split the morning sunshine into shafts of magic that danced on the hood of her car. She rounded a slight curve, and a white two-story house came into view. A delighted squeal bubbled up in her throat. This house, this beautiful silent testimony to days gone by, stood in the cool oasis of evergreen and elm, flanked by the quintessential red barn and scattering of smaller buildings. Sunshine dazzled like diamonds off the puddles and the bright green yard. The whole scene couldn't be more idyllic if it tried. Envy welled inside her. Had Mr. Get Rid of Everything spent any time here at all? He couldn't have, or he'd understand what a priceless pearl this place was. As she drew closer, the home's age became evident. Paint peeled from both the house and the barn. One side of the screened porch listed to the left. Weeds sprang up with abandon, but despite these imperfections, century-old charm was still there. It was love at first sight. She slowed to a near crawl, lost in daydreams and questions about the people who had lived here, about their stories, their lives. It reeled her in up to her knees, stuck fast with no hope of escape. No, wait. She wasn't just stuck in her daydreams. She was stuck in a giant puddle of oozing mud. So that is from this one, and as they investigate the past, and as the past timeline unfolds, we meet an immigrant from Ireland who is he's based off of a couple of ancestors of mine, my Irish immigrant, and then his father-in-law, who was a farmer in Sedgwick County. And I did not know this. When I was researching for this book, their names are on a cemetery monument in Mays, Kansas, which is just west of Wichita. That's actually where my children go to school. And they are listed as Mays pioneers. And I had no idea until I went out to that cemetery when I was researching the book. There's a scene in here that takes place in that cemetery. So there's a lot of little Wichita Easter eggs. My Wichita friends are asking me, hey, this restaurant, what's that based on? Sometimes I have one in mind, but sometimes I don't. And the cool part of this is my parents went to Europe for their 50th wedding anniversary. And on the day that I got my contract offer and was going to become a published author, I got to call my mom and tell her the good news. She was sitting in a cafe in Ireland in the exact hometown of the ancestor that inspired me. So that was super, super cool. This book deals with, there's a character here that has Alzheimer's, there's elder care issues, there is adoption, searching for one's birth family, and the whole theme of this book is identity. I write Christian fiction. I am a Christian, so there's some of that in here. And then it's a lot about finding your identity in both who you are as a person and who God created you to be. There's a lot of Christian identity in here. And then the sequel, this is book 2. This is The Songs That Could Have Been. This centers around the grandmother character from this book, the grandma with the farmhouse. She's the past heroine in this book. And the past timeline takes place in the 1950s. I invented a fictional high school in Wichita, and it's based off of Wichita East, if anybody's familiar with that. And this one is a direct sequel to this, and I guess now would be a good time to share a little bit of my journey to being published, because everybody thinks, oh, you write a book and then magic happens and you have this and you can publish. No, it is a very, very long and sometimes arduous journey. Mine was actually on the shorter side. But I had written a contemporary romance that it has nothing to do with any of this. And it won a couple of pre-published author contests. And one of those, the judge said, hey, do you already have an agent? Because if you don't, I would really like to read the rest of this because I'm interested in becoming your agent. And of course, I had no idea who it was. I looked her up and she represents a lot of really well-known Christian authors. And I'm going, huh? She wants my book? I called my best friend that is an author and I said, what do I do? And she said, well, if she wants to read your whole book, honey, you send her the whole book and let her read it. Okay, I can do that. And it took about 6 months for her to even respond. And I'm going, she's not interested, whatever. And she emailed, she said, hey, is this still available? I'm getting ready to read it. And I said, yeah, and within about a month, I had her, as she and I had to work together, she was going to be my literary agent. And I signed my contract with her on her birthday, which is also my husband's birthday, which is this coming Friday. So yeah, all kinds of fun little nuggets there. But that book that I submitted to her did not make any headway with publishers at all. They weren't interested in it. It probably won't ever be published, and that's okay. I'm kind of mining it for ideas for other books. And I had started writing this one, and I told her this is a little bit different. I'm writing a split time, and she says, well, split time is kind of a tough sell, but I won't represent anything you write, so we'll see what happens. And I had, in the meantime, I had gotten on social media because they tell authors, the days of authors hiding in a cabin in New England and writing books and not having to deal with people is over. Like, we get to come and do things like this now, which is cool. We also have to do social media, which is less cool. I don't love doing author social media, but I do it. I like telling funny stories about my kids though, because I have 3 of the funniest children in the entire world. But on Twitter, back when it was Twitter and not X or whatever it is now, I met with another author. She's a friend, and I kind of, we messaged back and forth, and one of our mutual friends said, you do know that her day job is acquisitions editor for Kregel Publications, right? And I said, no, I had no idea. So then, of course, I'm scrolling back through all of our conversations, making sure I didn't say anything stupid. She was going to be at a writers' conference in Nashville, I think is where it was that year. That was 2018. And I was already going to go, and I had made an appointment to pitch my book to her in hopes that Kregel would publish it. She came up to me and she said, yeah, I read it on the plane. I kind of fell in love with it, so you don't have to give me your little elevator pitch. I like it. So that is how I became connected with my editor. She and I are very good friends, and actually she is a co-author of the novella collection that I'm part of. So that was fun. But while I was writing this book, I also started writing this one. My agent had wanted me to pitch at least 2 books. And so I said, okay, I have a plan for a sequel. But then I'm going, I don't know that I want to write a sequel to a book that hasn't had a contract up for it yet, because if they don't want this one, they're not going to want this one either. And I'll think about it, but God said, write it anyway. And so I did it, and that's this one. Like I said, this one is, it is the sequel. It focuses on the grandmother from the first book and Garrett's sister, Lauren. She has dealt with some disordered eating. She has an ex-boyfriend that kind of launched that whole journey for her. And at the very beginning, she is going to a Dillon's grocery store in Wichita. I changed the spelling for the book, but that's what it is. And she runs into him. He is a TV meteorologist. He is shopping for makeup because, TV people have to wear makeup, and that's their meet cute. But the past storyline in this deals with an interracial relationship at a time when interracial relationships were not as accepted as they are now. And I was interested in this because my husband his family's from China. So I had never really, I always pictured myself marrying a white guy because, when you grow up in a largely white community, you just picture that for yourself. I met him in grad school and fell madly in love with him, and both of our families said, okay, that's cool. And I know there was a time in history where that wouldn't have been as accepted, so I thought, you know, what would it be like if you were like in the 1950s and you fell in love with someone who was, let's say, black? So that's this, this storyline. The scene that I'm gonna share with you it takes place in the high school choir room after school, and he is practicing piano. He plays gorgeously. And let's see, she is, let's see, where was I going to start here? Here it is. His name's Ephraim. He says, Ephraim lifted a slim shoulder. Not better, not worse, just different. Different, that was precisely it. That was what they were. His skin was brown, hers was white. His hair was black, hers was blonde. His church was like a football game, hers was like history class. His music contained flats and bluesy notes and rippling arpeggios, and hers was a choir singing from a hymnal. But were they really that different? They both loved Jesus, they both loved music, had the same sense of humor, and they liked each other in a way that both thrilled and terrified. The piano keys danced beneath Ephraim's capable hands. The tinkly chords and deep bass notes resonated with a sudden shift in key, one that raised the pitch of the familiar tune. White keys and black keys worked together in perfect harmony, and a thought struck her with such force it jumped instantly from her brain to her mouth, with no thought of whether it was gay, charming, or smart. I think we're like the piano, Ephraim. Ephraim opened his eyes and glanced at her. What do you mean by that? Look at the keys. Black, white, they're different, but none of them are better or worse than the other. None of them are more important. They all work together to make beautiful music. Her breath caught when she looked into his eyes, so deep and dark she could drown in them. Oh, she was being too forward. Mother would faint if she knew. Then again, Mother would faint at everything that was happening here. And when 1,000 different rules lay shattered on the stage floor, what was breaking one more? Ephraim played a series of chords up the keyboard. Your people don't want that. No, they don't. And mine aren't too sure either. The key changed again. His improvisation picked up speed and passion. They want us to be treated equal, sure, but they don't want too much mixing going on. Rosie paused. She knew her world was against them. It hadn't occurred to her that his world would be as well. But he took a deep breath, and hers hung suspended, awaiting what he'd say next. Right here, right now, it's just us. The music faded and fell silent. Rosie tried not to furrow her brow too much as she studied him. His hands that were so steady and certain on the keyboard, now shook slightly. He slipped his fingertips beneath the sleeve of his crisp white shirt, a shirt that was a touch too long for him. The silence was loud, far louder than the music had been. And since it's just us, eyes shining, he slipped something from his wrist and cradled it in the palm of his hand. Rosie's world stopped at the sight of the slender silver links, the circular metal plate engraved with his initials, his ID bracelet. I wondered if maybe you might want to wear this for a while. Her mouth fell open. She grieved at the moment a young man offered her his bracelet, told her she was pretty, and asked her to be his girl, to go steady with him, belong to him, to be his. But in her dreams, the gesture was always held up by the framework of propriety, of him shaking her father's hand and promising to have her back by 9:30, by sharing a Coke after school or taking in a movie at the Orpheum, dragging Douglas, going to sock hops, being his date to the prom. Accepting Ephraim's bracelet, being his girl would mean giving up those things. She wouldn't even be able to wear his bracelet in public. There would be no proper handshakes and dates to the movies. She wouldn't watch his face light up at the sight of her in her prom dress. She couldn't shout from the rooftops that the most wonderful man she'd ever met had asked her to be his. But a secret relationship with Ephraim was miles ahead of a public relationship with anyone else. I can't wear it, she saw his eyes. Not like I could if I weren't black, he said, or if I were white. She wrapped the bracelet in a gentle fist. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. No, she stopped him, her fingers on his. I didn't mean. I want to wear it, Ephraim, I too. His eyes met hers, widened slightly when he caught her meaning. I could wear it in here, she suggested, when it's just us. A smile was slow and sweet. You could. Her grip on his hand tightened. I will. So that's from this one. So that one, these came out during COVID. So I'm not used to in-person author events yet because I didn't get to have anyone. This one or this one. And then the third one, this one, my agent said when I submitted these two, she said, do you have an idea for book 3? And I said, I can come up with one. And she said, yeah, I want you to submit for a 3-book series instead of just 2. And I'm like, okay, the only other idea I had for a book was based on a family story that my mom discovered. This took place in the 1790s in Pennsylvania. And it was a family of my ancestors. They were on their way to church and they were attacked by Native Americans. And the entire family was wiped out except for the father and two of the sisters. They were both scalped and they lived. And I thought, how would you survive that? Like, how could that even work? And there's a little write-up in a history of the Quarterly family that she had headaches for the rest of her life, obviously, and she had figured out how to arrange her hair so that it could cover. But she ended up, I think she lived to be 65 years old. She had 10 kids, and that one is my direct ancestor. Her sister died a little younger. I think she was 21, and I had always been fascinated with this story. And I thought, well, I can put that in a book, but I don't know how to put it in Sedgwick County because the title of the series is Sedgwick County Chronicles, and I'm like, this is in Pennsylvania. My editor said, well, if the present story is in Wichita, it'll still work. And so that was my plan. I pitched the books. They said, yes, this will work just fine. And then I was researching a little bit I started the research process. And I learned about a guy named William McGee, who was part of a supply train in 1864. And he was attacked, his party was attacked near Great Bend, and he was scalped and he survived. And I'm going, oh, this happened in Kansas too. Okay. So I changed it and I moved it to Sedgwick County, and I said, okay, now I can write this book. So the past timeline is again in the pioneer era. So we have pioneers in the first book, 50s in the second book, more pioneers in this one. Some of the pioneer characters from Roots of Wood and Stone show up in this one too. And the contemporary heroine of this one is related to some of the characters in this book, but I'm not going to tell you how because that will spoil this one. So it's kind of a series, so read book one and then you'll understand everything. But the contemporary timeline deals with church spiritual abuse. You know, as much as we don't want to, if stuff like this happens in the church, it does. And sweeping it under the rug and pretending that it doesn't happen has not worked. So victims are starting to share their stories, and that is what this contemporary book is about. And the link between these two is, you know, how do you forgive the unforgivable? How do you move past when someone does something so awful to you? And I realized I just took the bookmark out, so I don't know where I was supposed to read. Oh, there it is. Okay. So this is an excerpt from the contemporary timeline. We have the story starts with a guy who has a broken violin and needs repair, and he gets an Uber ride to the repair shop from a woman who it turns out is the person who's going to be working on his violin. She's just picking up Uber customers to make a little bit extra money on the side. So they have become friends, but she hasn't told him. He is now a worship pastor at a church, and the head pastor at this church is the one who abused Siobhan, our heroine. And she hasn't told him yet, but she's about to. So that's this scene. Let's see. Where did I say I was going to start? Yes. Siobhan withdrew her hand, and with it went some of the vulnerability. Matt could almost see her guard inching back up as she fixed her attention on her latte. I can practically see the question marks hovering over your head, Matt. What? I'm not. Yes, you are. You're wondering what all went down, why I was fired. Siobhan, he laid down, hoping for another glimpse into those pain-filled eyes. Okay, yes, I'm curious about a lot of things, but I don't want to rush you or push you or force you to do or say anything you're not ready for. I'm not ready, not really, but you need to know some of it now. She pulled a deep breath and plunged ahead, her words tumbling out over the rapid picking pattern of the guitar on stage. You need to know that this whole thing was about a guy, a relationship I shouldn't have had with a guy I never ever should have fallen for. We got caught, he spread a bunch of lies about me and everyone believed him. That's why I lost my job. That's why all my friends disappeared. That's why, her voice thick, she stood and gestured toward the guitarist. That's why I can't even listen to these 4 stupid chord changes without wanting to throw something. Hey, he stood too. What should he do in this situation? Hug her? Leave her alone? Try to hold her hand again? In the end, he settled for shoving his hand deep into the pocket of his jeans. I'm sorry, Siobhan. Truly, deeply sorry that they hurt you. I wish there were words, but there aren't. There's nothing. Just, I'm sorry. Siobhan wrapped her arms around her midsection and nodded, her gaze fixed on the floor. And I'm sorry too. Matt frowned. You have nothing to apologize for. Yes, I do, because what I'm about to tell you might cost me my friendship with you too. I don't know. The urge to touch her was nearly overwhelming. I can't think of a single thing in the world that you could say to me that would make me not want to be your friend. Oh, that's what you think. Siobhan, it was Trace. Matt recoiled as he been slapped. What? The relationship I never should have had, the guy I never should have fallen for, it was your friend, your boss, your mentor, your stand-in dad. Matt, it was Trace. Then she drained the last of her latte, chucked the mug into the plastic bin on top of the trash can, shoved open the door, and disappeared into the snowy night. So that is this one. I am currently working on another series for the same publisher. I just finished the draft for my fourth novel, which I have called Book War in my head ever since I started it, because I came up with working titles for my first two, and my publisher said, we can come up with better ones, and they did. So ever since then, this was always book 3 in my head. Sometimes if people ask me, what's the real title of book 3? Sometimes I can't remember what it is. So I didn't come up with it. So book 4, my publishers were like, we think maybe you should branch out beyond Kansas. And I said, I don't want to. And they said, we want you to. So I said, okay, but Kansas is kind of a big part of my author brand. I have sunflowers on my website and everything. And they said, what about somewhere else in the Midwest? And I said, well, I used to live in Illinois. And they said, okay. And I said, okay. So Illinois, parts of Illinois are basically just like Kansas, just more corn, less wheat. It's still flat. I'm thinking, okay, I can handle this. I can write. And I lived in Illinois for 6 years. So I'm writing an Illinois set book, but I had still Kansas. But it is about a choir director and an accompanist, right? But you know, who find a piece of handwritten music in the choir library that belonged to, they find out, a student who was composing. So that's book 4. There will be another book or 2 in that series, but the book 4 is supposed to come out about a year from now. And then book 5 will come out sometime in 2026 or 2027, I think. My oldest will be a senior in high school then, which he was a baby when I started writing. So that just blows my mind. So, does anybody have any questions for me? I love questions. Yes.
And what I would point out, most of the people in this room have background stories of extreme sacrifice to get over this. Most of the people in this room are unaware of the stories. And that's why we need a writer to remind us of what it took to get to the great melting.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That was a needed encouragement, yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
So the third book is the Rhythm and Fractured.
Yes. Yes, that is the third one. Any other questions? That's a good question. The question is, how many hours a day do I spend writing? Usually, I get my kids off to school by 7 because these schools start really early. And then I am usually writing for a couple of hours in the morning, and then my choir job is in the afternoons. So I write in the morning, I go deal with teenagers in the afternoons, and then my own teenagers come home. So I deal with the teenagers all evening. So usually it's 2 or 3 hours a day. And I've had people ask, well, when are you going to quit the music job so that you can write full time? And the answer is, I hope never, because I love music just as much as I love writing. I can't not do either one. So I'm going to find a way to do both. And I'm grateful that, you know, my job is understanding of my author side. I think my choir is rehearsing right now without me. But my director is like, yeah, this is fine. But yeah, I love having that time in the morning. When my kids were little, I used to write during their nap time. Like I was pretty strict about 1 o'clock till about 2:30. You guys need to disappear. You don't have to sleep. You just need to leave mommy alone so that she can deal with her fictional people. And I do remember one memorable afternoon. My middle son, Jonathan, he was about 3 years old. I had put Caleb and Jonathan down for a nap. The baby was sleeping. And I'm sitting at the kitchen table. I'm writing. The doorbell rings. I open the door. it's my 3-year-old son Jonathan standing on the front porch, and I'm like, how did you manage to do that? He had been downstairs in the basement. He had figured out how to open the window, climb out,
Oh,
go around the house and ring the doorbell to surprise his mom. So, yeah, that's what it's like riding with little kids at home. I'm glad they're in school now. I love the family, but I'm glad they're in school.
You do, intergenerational, or you do, books that are flashbacks, you think you'll do an intergenerational, with your kids, your teenagers?
Yeah,
Sharing, old things, bringing it into the new?
yeah, I mean, I grew up with a very deep awareness of my family and where we had come from and our stories. And, you know, part of what made history come alive for me in school was knowing that, okay, we're studying the Revolutionary War. I have ancestors that fought in that. We're studying the Civil War. I have ancestors that fought on both sides of that. And I don't think that my story is particularly unique. I think a lot of people whose families have been here for hundreds of years probably have similar stories, but like the story of our family is kind of the story of the USA. So like it really made history come alive for me. So I've been able to tell my kids, you know, oh, you're studying the Revolutionary War in school. You had ancestors that fought in that. And the other cool part is since my in-laws are immigrants from China. So my 2 kids that were born in Kansas, they are 6th generation Kansans on my side, and they are 2nd generation Americans on the other side, which I think is super fun. And, you know, my in-laws have their own history. My husband's descended from Chinese royalty. So, you know, my kids have half of them for their Chinese royalty and the other half their American pioneers, which I think is very fun. Do you have another question?
Well, listen,
Yes.
nothing does about this area of the tank teams. Why very they put that food in the center area. Kills.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons.
I think those, but that might be something.
Yeah, this is great. I'm getting lots of ideas. Okay, well, if there are no further questions, I'll be here. I have all 3 of my books available if anybody wants to buy them. They will be in the library. I'm giving these copies will wind up on the shelves here. So thank you all very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. And I will get to navigate the I-70 closure on my way back home. Oh, you're very welcome. Would you like to sign? Happy to sign them, and I'll just kind of be over here. And anybody wants to come talk? Go for it.